The National Desk, America's News Now.
Inflation at a 40-year high, the stock market falling, and a new gas price prediction, $6 a gallon by the end of the summer.
We got to gas up, we drive around.
Hard-working people, we shouldn't be throat cut at the price of gasoline.
The damage these prices are doing to America's economy and the dire warning about a coming recession. The country's drug crisis reaching a boiling point.
This is dangerous.
It's a murder. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this.
Fentanyl and meth killing tens of thousands of Americans. Why the Biden border policies are being blamed. And flavored e-cigarettes were banned to keep kids from getting addicted, but companies found a loophole. How Congress is cracking down once again. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Eugene Ramirez. On this weekend edition, we take a look at the big headlines of the week and a look ahead at what to expect. Here are the top stories we're following for you this week. The nation asking tough questions after police say a white supremacist killed 10 black grocery shoppers. Coronavirus cases on the rise once again, now the CDC issuing new warnings. Officials raising the alarm about deadly drugs crossing the southern border into the United States. And some economists now saying we will indeed see a recession in the next 2 years. According to a Quinnipiac poll released this week, an overwhelming majority of Americans, 85%, think a recession is coming. The Dow ended this week down around 1,200 points from Monday morning's opening. Inflation still at a 40-year high. And now an eye-popping prediction as of Friday. The national average for a gallon of gas sitting at $4.59. J.P. Morgan estimating now that we will see $6 a gallon by August. Americans fearing the worst is yet to come. The National Desk, Kayla Gaskins, taking a closer look at the recession fears.
Stunning numbers from retail giants. On Wednesday, Target shares tanked 25%, the biggest drop since 1987. Walmart also taking the biggest hits in 35 years. More evidence, some say, we're headed for a serious economic downturn.
We're starting to see the tip of the iceberg of a problem, and the problem is a recession.
Americans also increasingly pessimistic. A new poll showing 85% think there will be a recession in the next year, something the Fed is aggressively trying to prevent.
So right now, we are in a waiting situation to see if the Federal Reserve can do this gently enough to get us to what they call a soft landing. Me, I'm skeptical.
Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who as recently as October insisted inflation would be transitory, now sounding more dire.
Certainly, the economic outlook globally is challenging and uncertain, and higher food and energy prices are having stagflationary effects.
Inflation still at a 40-year high. The national average price for a gallon of gas, $4.58 a gallon, breaking a records that have been broken every day this week.
Gas prices hurting Americans, but also eating away massive chunks of corporate profits.
We project that's going to hit us about $1 billion of incremental costs.
President Biden struggling to address soaring prices while politicians play the blame game.
The Democrats have wanted it all to be cost side inflation that's driving this, because those are things that are out of their control. The Republicans have said, no, you stimulated the economy too much. That's what's doing things, and we have to dial it back. You know, both things can be true at the same time.
Not everything looks gloomy. The unemployment rate staying low and Americans continuing to spend heartily. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins for the National Desk, America's News Now.
The owners of the Tops Friendly Market in Buffalo, New York, say they're trying to reopen as soon as possible, and the FBI has wrapped up its investigation there at the crime scene. A grand jury indicted the suspect, Peyton Gendron, Thursday. Outside, Sharon Doyle hoping to catch a glimpse of that man she says took so much from her community.
I wanted to actually look the monster in his eyes, but until I found out that he went under a tunnel to get to county court, so I didn't see him. I was hoping to get some solace in that. But I needed to be out here. I needed to just walk around a silent vigil to myself just to get some handle on this.
Gendron is expected back in court on June 9th. Now, the online forum Discord says the suspect posted his plans on the website half an hour before that shooting started. Gendron allegedly created a private chat on the website to discuss his plans, and in those posts, the accused shooter wrote he visited the Tops grocery store 3 times in March to survey the layout there. He also wrote that he picked a grocery store instead of a school or church because he knew it would be busy at peak times. And listen to this. He says he chose the zip code because it has the highest percentage of black people closest to his home. Well, that shooting in Buffalo just the latest of a disturbing new trend of domestic terror attacks in this country. Now there are new warnings about what law enforcement can expect in the future. The National Desk's Christine Fristow digging into those numbers and the stories behind them.
Change don't come.
As friends and family remember the lives of 10 people murdered at Tops grocery store in Buffalo, there are growing concerns about the prevalence of these types of violent acts.
Terrorism, domestic terrorism, violence inflicted in the service of hate, and the vicious thirst for power.
With examples like the attack at the U.S. Capitol still fresh on the minds of so many, new evidence of a growing trend, a sharp increase in the number of domestic terror attacks.
This increase began around 2014, and the number has reached historic highs in 2020 and 2021.
Katrina Doxey authored a brand new report detailing the rise in domestic terror attacks over the last year and some alarming trends. While in 2020, most attacks related to demonstrations, 58%, were conducted by violent far-right perpetrators, including white supremacists and militia members. In 2021, 73% were orchestrated by far-left individuals, including anarchists and anti-fascist extremists. Her report highlighted the ideology of perpetrators of those attacks in 2021, with 49% from those on the violent far right and 40% on the violent far left, a number that's grown significantly in recent years.
They don't trust that the government or law enforcement will be able to adequately protect them and protect the U.S. population from the threat from the violent far right.
Following the leak of the Supreme Court's draft opinion showing Roe versus Wade is likely to be overturned, this anti-abortion clinic in Wisconsin was bombed. Axios now reporting that DHS is preparing for violence following the final ruling. The Department of Homeland Security has created a new system to deal with domestic violent extremism, which it calls the most lethal and persistent terrorism-related threat to our country today. I'm Christine Fristow reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
The governor of Oklahoma expected to sign the strictest abortion measure in the country. It was passed by the state legislature this week. This bill would ban all abortions except for 2 cases: to save the life of a pregnant woman and if the pregnancy is a result of rape or incest, but only if that crime is reported to authorities. Abortion providers calling it a dark day for Oklahoma. Meanwhile, supporters of the bills calling it a major win for life in the state.
There can be nothing higher or more critical than the defense of innocent, unborn life.
Oklahoma, if you're preborn, all good. If you're pre-K, good frickin' luck.
Now, just one House Republican voted against that measure. The FDA sharing some good news for families on the hunt for baby formula. The commissioner now saying parents should start to see improvement within days. Between the increase in production from manufacturers under the Defense Production Act and the boost in imports as well, he says we'll see more products on store shelves by the end of the week. The House has passed 2 bills to alleviate the shortage this week. Children ages 5 to 11 now eligible for COVID-19 booster shots. CDC advisors recommending the FDA-approved Pfizer booster Thursday, making it the first booster shot for that age group. However, so far, only about 1 in 3 kids ages 5 to 11 have even gotten that initial vaccine series. A new forecast from the CDC predicts thousands more people could die from COVID-19 by this time next month. The agency predicts deaths could increase by about 80 people a day, adding up to 11,000 deaths within the next month. The CDC also expects hospitalizations to increase over the next month, between 1,300 to 11,000. Now, those predictions coming as the CDC says more than 32% of people in the U.S. live in areas with medium or high COVID community levels. The agency is encouraging people who live in high-level areas to wear a mask in indoor public spaces. The CDC also says masks are a good idea for certain people in medium-level communities.
In areas where community levels are high, everyone should be using prevention measures and wearing a mask in public indoor settings. In areas with medium COVID-19 community levels in yellow, individuals should consider taking prevention measures based on their own risk.
Now, according to the CDC, right now, just over 4% of U.S. counties have high COVID-19 community levels. In 2 long years of the COVID pandemic, children across the country have had their education interrupted and are suffering the consequences right now. According to the nonprofit Save the Children, low-income students and students of color are more at risk of falling behind. Now, this gap can lead to higher dropout rates and a lower income in the future. In Virginia this week, a new report broke down what the state superintendent calls some troubling trends. The National Desk's Kristen Moran reports from Lynchburg.
According to this Virginia Department of Education report, the student achievement gap is widening. That's not good enough, according to Secretary of Education Amy Gudera.
We cannot afford to lose another generation of children because of our inability to hold ourselves, our schools, and our students to high expectations.
The report says in recent years, Virginia's reputation for education has dropped. State Superintendent Jillian Ballow says our expectations for students isn't high enough.
Over time, we have become accustomed to a culture of sporadic sharing of data, lowered expectations for students, and declining student achievement.
We have a lot of work to do to be the best. And beyond that, the trends have been heading in the wrong direction.
This report is part of Governor Glenn Youngkin's first executive order. Here's some of the key points it breaks down. In 2019, only 33% of Virginia's 8th graders are proficient in reading. From 2017 to 2019, reading SOL scores declined each year for grades 3 through 8. And Virginia has fallen from 3rd to 9th in the nation when it comes to students earning college credit on AP exams. But what's most concerning is an even wider achievement gap in both math and reading for Black and Hispanic students.
Equity is opportunity. Our education system must believe in all children and their ability to achieve excellence.
Now the pressure is on to correct what leaders say are errors in the school system.
That was Kristen Moran reporting. State education leaders say their 4-year plan includes establishing and maintaining high expectations and empowering teachers and parents. And still to come, rising prices creating a desperate situation for millions of Americans right now.
We've seen a number of accidental deaths in our community.
The surprising place deputies are finding these counterfeit pills. And when threats are made on social media, who's responsible for reporting them? The National Desk Fact Check team investigates in just a few minutes. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now. Catch us live weekdays from 6 to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. till midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. You can also watch anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We're back after this. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. Our team of nearly 4,000 local journalists bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. From Ohio food banks now facing shortages to a bride's wedding dress stolen in California. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start with the rise in counterfeit pills being found in Texas.
Uninsured Texans seeking prescription pain medicine are turning to the streets looking for a bargain, but what they often find are dangerous counterfeits. And that's keeping local first responders and law enforcement busy dealing with cases involving overdoses of narcotics.
The accidental deaths in our community related to people taking these pills, and the counterfeit pills have multiple drugs in them, and one of them is fentanyl.
Today, Travis County commissioners were briefed on the situation. Police using drug-sniffing dogs even found these dangerous drugs in a school.
The number of students identified by the dogs that were carrying these pills.
The Travis County Commissioners Court might take action to declare a public health crisis to address the increase in drug overdoses.
We heard almost weeping officers a couple of weeks ago about their clients that they're concerned about on the street and finding them dead.
The hospital ED visits by our teams today are adult death counts of tomorrow if we don't do something now.
Area Food Pantry with God's Grace seeing nearly a 50% increase during its mobile drives.
2 months ago is when we really started seeing more families coming.
The Dayton Food Bank normally serving upwards of 175 families this time last year.
Over the last couple months, we've been seeing anywhere between 300 to 400 families.
According to the USDA's Consumer Index's latest update, food prices are nearly 9% higher than in March 2021.
Meat is so sky high, and if you can get meat, it's still not the quality, and the amount of the portions is so much smaller than what it used to be.
Poultry, dairy, and produce dwindling off store shelves.
So we're getting a lot of produce that is just reaching its sell-by date,
impacting what food pantries can have on theirs.
We used to be able to get the food donated from the grocery stores, but because they're keeping it longer, by the time we get it, it's not able to be given out to our clients.
And so when I tried it on, it was like, oh, this is it. Like, you know, you had that little princess moment.
And that was the first day that I saw her in the dress, too. And it was beautiful.
But that dress, her wedding dress, is now gone. A thief broke into her car and stole an important piece of her wedding day. Why did she leave such a valuable item in the car in the first place? She says she had many errands to run.
I had to go to Selma first and then Kingsburg and then to Fresno. Gas is so expensive, so I was like, you know what, we'll just take it.
Martinez had ordered her dress in February and received the call that the dress had arrived. Filled with anticipation, she drove to Kingsburg to pick it up. Assuming it would be safe, she parked inside the garage, leaving it behind. When they returned to the car, Martinez spotted her window completely broken, the thief eyeing only one item, her wedding dress.
Now, I learned a lesson not to leave anything in my car.
The tragedy in Buffalo has put social media platforms in the spotlight once again. New York City Mayor Eric Adams and Governor Kathy Hochul have been saying these companies need to do a better job eliminating violent speech online. Our fact-check team digging deeper into social media threats and whether or not big tech can be held responsible.
Earlier, we discussed all the duties and laws surrounding what social media platforms must report to law enforcement. But we wanted to know more about what company policies are already in place. I'm back with Connor from our fact check team. Now, Connor, what else are they doing to weed out harmful speech?
Like you said, Megan, these companies have rules in place that crack down on things like disinformation and hate speech. To do this, they use algorithms and groups of moderators whose only job is to look for and get rid of any content that goes against their rules. But a lot of critics like Governor Adams don't think this is enough because some things are falling through the cracks. For instance, both the Subway and Buffalo, New York shooters were following and posting extremely radical and racist content online.
Well, isn't there a bipartisan push to change this?
Yes, there's been several bills and they focus on accountability. One of them is led by Senators Chris Coons, Amy Klobuchar, and Republican Senator Rob Portman. It's called the Platform Accountability and Transparency Act. It would require social media companies to share data they have on their algorithms, how people use their sites, and the consequences of all of that. The thought here is that this information will help Congress learn how it can regulate social media, but it's got a long way to go before it becomes law.
All right, Connor, thank you. Our fact check team will continue to follow developments on these and other issues. You can also read the story with links on where the team found their information. It's all on our website. Just go to thenationaldesk.com.
A $6 per gallon gas price prediction has Americans scrambling, but what are the chances we're actually going to see that? We're going to ask the experts next. Plus, as the end of Title 42 looms, the head of Homeland Security making promises about the predicted border surge. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now. As we inch closer and closer to Memorial Day, travelers feeling the incredible pain, TSA and the pump with out-of-control gas prices as well. California now paying more than $6 a gallon, and finance heavyweight J.P. Morgan warning that prices could spread nationwide. Now this week, our Jan Jeffcoat asked Patrick DeHaan, the head of petroleum analysis at Gas Buddy, what he's watching for right now.
First and foremost, I'll take the under on that. I don't think $6.20 a gallon. That's the number, by the way, that J.P. Morgan came out with gasoline hitting $6.20 a gallon as a possibility. I didn't read the full research note. I would take the under on that so far. Maybe in a month we'll come back and revisit it. But, I've still been sticking to the fact that $5 is improbable, though, in the last couple of weeks. It seems like a rising risk. But $6.20 a gallon. I think the president has some tools up his sleeve he could employ should we start to get that direction.
What kind of tools?
We could expand the gasoline pool. Well, we talk about RVP, right? The winter versus summer gasoline. Those are tools usually utilized during a hurricane. There's an RVP waiver that can be applied to expand the gasoline pool. I think that would probably be the first thing the president would do if the risk of that $6 a gallon fuel was imminent.
What are you watching for right now as the benchmark seems to be ever changing? Because you did just say a few weeks ago, no way, it would never go over $5 a gallon. And already we're seeing $4.56 a gallon.
Yeah, the situation, the tide seems to be turning. There's obviously a lot of concern and has been a lot of concern about diesel. But now RBOB, or gasoline, is getting the attention as demand continues to go up. We're kind of we're heading maybe to the same direction of diesel. Not to say that there's simply not enough refinery capacity in this country, and consumers have been incredibly resilient, and it's not even summer yet. So I'm a little concerned that gasoline could go the way of diesel a little bit, if consumers don't slow down consumption. And so far, like I said, our data pointing that gasoline demand last week jumped 3%. It's not even Memorial Day yet.
Right. And I want to just put this in perspective for a second here when it comes to California, because just yesterday, California did hit that record of $6.02 per gallon. Prices have increased 31 cents over the past month in the Golden State. I've received emails from people when we talk about gas, below $5, and some people from California have emailed me and said, Jane, we haven't seen gas below $5 in months. As someone who has been tracking gas for nearly 20 years, what do you make of what we're seeing out west?
Yeah, it's ugly. California, of course, with all of its various taxes, fees, carbon management programs, they're in a league of their own. Not only that, but they're essentially cut off from the rest of the country's refining capacity, pipelines, et cetera. So whenever there's a hot spot in California, an unexpected refinery issue, those can cause gas prices to go to the moon because it takes a long time for gasoline to flow from Asia into California. And keep in mind, there are standards there for mandated by CARB, the Air Resources Board, on what type of gasoline they can use are incredibly stringent, and that doesn't help either.
Now, we also asked how much more gas can go up over the Memorial Day weekend. You can find that answer posted right now at thenationaldesk.com. The U.S. officially spending billions of dollars to help Ukraine in its fight against Russia. But what exactly are those taxpayer dollars funding? Coming up, our fact-check team taking a closer look. Time now for a look at the top trending stories on our website right now. Tesla CEO Elon Musk accused of exposing himself to a SpaceX employee. Business Insider reports the woman was paid $250,000 when she filed a complaint. A Seattle couple has been living on a cruise ship for the past year, multiple cruise ships that is, because they did the math and found it's cheaper to do that than to pay for their regular living expenses. How about that? And a Catholic school in Pennsylvania apologizing after selling roses that transformed into underwear. They sold that to students, by the way, for Mother's Day. Those stories and more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. Time now for a look ahead at a few big stories we're following for you in the week ahead. The Supreme Court expected to release at least one decision on Monday, and one decision being closely watched, the Mississippi abortion case challenging Roe v. Wade. The court still has to issue opinions on more than 30 cases before its summer recess. Jury selection is set to begin Monday in a civil suit against Bill Cosby, a woman accusing him of sexual assault in the mid-1970s. And Wednesday, the Ohio Supreme Court holds oral arguments over whether or not Governor Mike DeWine had the power to end federal unemployment enhancement. A shocking case of road rage, and it's all caught on camera.
I just in shock, just couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Coming up, a closer look at this video right here and what one witness says led up to this attack. And midterm primaries well underway across America. All eyes on Georgia now, where polls open Tuesday. Our Capitol Hill team breaking it down.
The National Desk, America's News, now.
Here's a look at the top stories we're following right now. Finance company J.P. Morgan warning that America will see a recession in the next 2 years. The 18-year-old suspect in the Buffalo shooting reportedly posted his plans on the internet 30 whole minutes before that attack. And Oklahoma legislators have passed the strictest abortion law in the country. It bans all abortions after the moment of conception, except in cases of rape or incest or to save the mother's life. Title 42 is set to expire on Monday, and this week Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas visited the southern border to reassure border agents of the country's plan to deal with that expected migrant surge. Secretary Mayorkas laying out a 6-pillar response of surge resources that include personnel, medical support, and facilities to address, of course, concerns over Title 42 expiring. Now, this policy has allowed agents to deport or turn away asylum seekers over COVID-19 concerns, but it's now set to expire Monday. Secretary Mayorkas says the U.S. is working with Mexican officials to prevent that migrant surge.
So we have not seen a significant decrease in the flows, but we are working very closely with our partners to the south, with Mexico, in anticipation of a potential surge in a post-Title 42 environment.
Well, now some Republicans are worried about more than just migrants surging at the southern border. One state taking action this week to stop illegal drugs from pouring into the U.S. across the border. The National Desk, Ryan Smith, has this angle.
Florida's governor signing a new law cracking down on dealers while also blaming the Biden administration for a drug smuggling spike.
Found him unresponsive, and it was too late.
A Florida father sharing a heartbreaking loss. His son killed after overdosing on drugs laced with fentanyl.
If you're intentionally giving somebody something that you know is going to kill him, I'm going to call it a murder from now on, because that's exactly what it is. It's a murder.
Florida's governor signing a bill Thursday to tighten penalties for trafficking fentanyl and meth. Those convicted could face life in prison or the death penalty.
2 milligrams, and 116 people in Polk County alone last year died from just this small amount of fentanyl.
Federal data shows agents seized 839 pounds of fentanyl at the southwest border in January, up from 461 pounds 1 month earlier. Some Republicans blaming the president's border policies for a smuggling spike.
And if you look at what's going on in the southern border right now, I don't think we've ever seen anything like this with the massive numbers of people that are coming across the border illegally. It's fueling a massive infusion of fentanyl into this country.
Data shows fentanyl seizures and overdoses have been on the rise since 2016.
So that happened under the Trump administration. And now they're saying, oh, this is Biden's fault. Well, it's everybody's fault. And the simplistic solutions of build a wall or cracking down on the border isn't going to solve a very complex problem.
Mike Catani hopes whatever gets done helps prevent another parent from suffering a loss like his.
And get some of these guys off the street and hopefully wipe this out.
The DEA says fentanyl is at the center of America's ongoing opioid crisis. More than 100,000 people died from drug overdoses in 2021. Up 15% from the year before. In Washington, Ryan Smith for the National Desk.
As the courts decide the future of Title 42, a new border security coalition offering Congress a detailed roadmap to, they say, end the crisis at the border. The letter to congressional leaders stating in part, quote, this purposeful crisis was made possible by glaring loopholes in our immigration system that have been allowed to persist for far too long. It is not enough for the next Congress to simply restart construction of the border wall system or adjust resources at Customs and Border Protection. While those are important measures required to secure the borders, without closing the loopholes and other changes, the Biden administration's policies will continue to act as a powerful magnet, attracting millions of illegal aliens into our country. Well, this week, Jan Jeffcoat sat down with former Acting Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection Mark Morgan, who joined various former senior officials and organizations calling for Congress to exclude amnesty of any type, create an authority to immediately expel migrants, reform the asylum system, finish the border wall, and increase CBP personnel and resources. He explains how he believes these measures will improve the border.
plan right now that the Secretary Mayorkas has been out there, the so-called 6-pillar plan, does nothing to secure the border or stem the flow of illegal immigration. All it does is throw more money and more resources at getting better at processing. That's why we say it will just continue to create an incentive and a magnet for more illegal aliens to come into this country. Look, it will just basically be a transfer of wealth from the U.S. taxpayers to the cartels. Our plan, that roadmap, we know because we've been there, we've been successful. If they actually enact all those elements that we've outlined in that coalition letter, we know that they'll be able to secure the border.
So will Democratic lawmakers really consider closing these loopholes, especially as we inch closer to the midterms and immigration continues to be a major topic of discussion? What's it going to take?
Yeah, I think that's the next good question, Jan. I think if we look at it like we have for decades, and look at this huge umbrella under comprehensive immigration reform, I think it's going to fail. I think people are going to go to their ideological and political corners, and it's going to die just as it has for decades. So I think we need to shift the narrative, and this is something that we talked to the Republican House committee, is let's stop talking about comprehensive immigration reform. Let's set our priorities. Let's talk about border security first. I think most Americans understand and get behind that we've got to stop the drugs from pouring into this country, killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. We've got to stop our borders from being open, that criminal aliens, including murderers, rapists, and pedophiles, and gang members continue to pour into this country. And we have to make sure that we reduce our national security vulnerability. I think most Americans get that and understand that. That's why we're trying to say, let's first talk in terms of border security to protect this nation.
You can watch that full interview with Mark Morgan and other conversations we've had this week on The National Desk on our website, thenationaldesk.com. Now, next week will mark 3 months since Russia invaded Ukraine, and there are no signs that this conflict will end anytime soon. This week, the Vatican offering to help moderate peace talks between Kyiv and Moscow. Just Friday, a Russian missile destroyed a building in eastern Ukraine, hurting several people, including an 11-year-old child. There are, however, more signs of progress for Ukraine. Officials say Ukrainian troops have recaptured some smaller towns near Kharkiv after weeks of relentless shelling in that region. This week, the first Russian soldier to face war crime charges in the invasion pleaded guilty to shooting and killing a civilian. The 21-year-old said he was guilty of killing the 62-year-old Ukrainian man. The group Human Rights Watch says it's documented dozens of alleged Russian war crimes in the Kyiv and Chernihiv regions.
We went into over 17 villages and towns, spoke with over 65 people to document and expose their apparent war crimes, horrific abuses committed against civilians.
Now, according to the United Nations, more than 2,700 Ukrainian civilians have been killed in the Russian attack. This week, the United States Senate approved $40 billion in aid for Ukraine, and that's on top of the millions that have already been spent. 11 Republicans voting against that measure. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul saying, quote, "We cannot save Ukraine by dooming the U.S. economy." So what exactly is this money paying for? Our fact-check team breaking it all down for us.
The Ukraine aid package provides $900 million for refugee assistance and $8.8 billion in economic support, with portions of that being for distributing food aid and fighting human trafficking. I'm back with the fact-check team here tonight to break this all down. Connor, we touched on the humanitarian side, but you found out what else is in that aid package tonight.
That's right, and most of the funding will go towards weapons and equipment for Ukraine. $15 billion is dedicated to defense operations and maintenance, and it gives $8.5 billion the president can spend on weapons transfers, which come from our stockpile. And defense contractors are saying this has put a strain on our own weapons supply. But we found that the package addresses this issue by allocating nearly $9 billion to go towards ramping up production of U.S. weapons and replenishing our stockpile.
And Anna Maria, we know that the U.S. provides billions of dollars in world aid every year. You tracked down how much is spent and really where all that money goes.
Yeah, so President Biden's 2023 fiscal year budget for the State Department and the U.S. Agency for International Development is $60.4 billion. That's about 1% of his proposed federal budget. The administration says this money will go toward advancing efforts to fight corruption, promoting gender equality, strengthening humanitarian assistance, and reinforcing global health leadership. Humanitarian assistance helps maintain the United States' ability to respond to the global events like the crisis in Syria and Yemen, as well as natural disasters.
Anna Maria and Connor following the money for us tonight. The Fact Check team will continue to follow developments on this and several other important issues. You can also read this story with links to where they found all of their information tonight on our website right there, thenationaldesk.com.
Parents right now scrambling to find food for their babies amid a national baby formula shortage. Well, still ahead, our political roundtable is laying out the emergency action taken by Capitol Hill to restock those store shelves. But first,
So you started just wailing on them. Just pow, pow, pow.
a road rage dispute escalating to violence, and it's all caught on camera. How this attack nearly turned deadly. Next. The National Desk team of reporters bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start in Cincinnati, where police there are searching for a man involved in a shocking road rage attack. The suspect caught on camera beating an elderly man.
I was sitting there, I'm like, I just in shock, just couldn't believe what I was seeing. They just started just wailing on him. Just pow, pow, pow.
Jacob Barhorst was riding his motorcycle. In front of him, a group of bikers and a man in a black Mercedes convertible. Barhorst says the convertible driver cuts one of the bikers off, but appears apologetic.
The guy just cut him off, he like waved him like, my bad.
Soon as they hit a red light, the biker dismounts and starts beating the convertible driver, a man Lawrenceburg police say is nearly 70 years old. Barhorst thinks he counted about 5 closed-fist punches straight to the head. Even after that, the driver still had the state of mind to drive off. At least that's how it appears at first.
He started going on the other end of the road on oncoming traffic, and I'm like, holy cow.
Police say the driver lost consciousness. He ends up smashing into the side of this truck. But by that point, the biker, his passenger,
it looked like a child on the back of his bike.
And the 2 other motorcycles are long gone.
Over to Fresno, California now. Thieves caught on camera stealing from a lumber yard. Holt Lumber says the bandits used an electric saw to break open the gate. Now, police believe their face coverings indicate that they knew where the security cameras were. In just 8 minutes, they stole 200 pieces of wood worth thousands of dollars. And despite the video evidence, Holt Lumber does not have much hope in catching these criminals.
Unless we start actually changing a little bit of how we keep guys and how we punish our criminals in Fresno, I don't know if it'll matter.
Holt Lumber has been a fixture in Fresno for nearly a century. The owner says thefts are a weekly issue there. In Florida, thousands of homeowners losing their home insurance just before the start of hurricane season. Mason Insurance Company says it's dropping nearly 70,000 Floridians, saying home coverage in the state is just too risky. But it's not because of the hurricanes, but rather because of the disproportionate number of lawsuits against insurers.
It's basically a nightmare. It's probably the worst part of the industry that we've seen in probably my 22 years.
According to the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, while Florida makes up 8% of home insurance claims nationwide, it accounts for 76% of insurance lawsuits. The governor has called a special session to try to offer homeowners some relief. skyrocketing gas prices shattering records across the country. Our political roundtable joining us next with how Washington is addressing those painful prices at the pump. Plus, the FDA's regulation of e-cigs in 2020 was supposed to stop underage vaping, but flavored products are still targeting teens. Capitol Hill's plan to wipe them out still ahead.
Welcome back to TND. Our Washington Bureau's correspondents, producers, videographers, and editors are covering Capitol Hill and D.C. every day to report on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. Two of our correspondents, Scott Thuman and Atra Elnishar, are here with us to share their insights and analysis. Atra, it feels like we talk about this every week, but prices from food to gas to housing continuing to spike across the country, with gas prices hitting new records every day, it seems.
Yeah, Stephen, as we head into peak summer driving season, gas in all 50 states hit at least $4 a gallon on average. And that is for the very first time ever that we saw that happen this week. And the highest, no surprise to many, is around $6 in California. That's according to AAA. And Steve, we're getting a better idea of how this is impacting the broader economy, not just drivers. So even if gas prices just suddenly dropped tomorrow, there's an analysis by JP Morgan that suggests the current high prices have already done long-term economic damage. So they project that for every dollar of additional spending on gas, people will spend $1.60 less on non-gas spending. And many are turning to Washington for a fix here, and a quick fix. Democrats, of course, still accusing oil and gas companies of refusing to produce more so that they can make bigger profits. This week, we saw them move forward with a bill that would empower the FTC to penalize price gougers. On the other side of the aisle, you're seeing Republicans argue that companies can't produce more, either because federal regulations are in their way or they're being discouraged from producing more. They say they can't get lending from Wall Street because the administration's climate policies discourage it. So really, you've got two absolutely opposite strategies here in Washington that's leading to a gridlock, and that just means more months of expensive driving.
And Audrey, you mentioned Americans looking to Washington for quick fixes. Scott, President Biden trying to tackle another crisis, the baby formula shortage. He got a little blowback from his critics.
Yeah, Steve, and critics from both sides of the aisle. It was not just Republicans like Marco Rubio, for example, of Florida, who said, I called on the president more than a week ago to invoke the Defense Production Act and upgrade the ability of this country to not only produce baby formula, but keep it here in the United States before sending off to any customers out of country. But also from Democrats. We talked to someone like Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat out of Connecticut, who in not so many words said that the president was too slow on this. And you've got people from all spectrums who are saying now that this is becoming a little bit of a pattern for the president. They believe that while they're devoted to him as a leader from the Democratic Party, especially on the Democratic side, they say that he's been a little late to the game on everything from aid to Ukraine, sanctions against Russia, some COVID response and relief, some of the financial relief that we need to see with supply chain issues. So this is something that the president's getting hit from on both sides. And while he is trying to amend the situation right now, Some people say it's never too late, but it doesn't help.
Yeah, it's another issue contributing to Americans' pessimism. And Tuesday, more voters are heading to the polls for midterm primaries. All eyes on Georgia, Scott.
Yeah, there's some fascinating races going on right now in Georgia. And of course, the Senate race, or what people believe will be the eventual Senate race, perhaps in the general election, if we get a little ahead of ourselves here, between current Senator Raphael Warnock, who knocked off an incumbent Republican, which says a lot in Georgia, during a special runoff just 2 years, not even 2 years ago, against Kelly Loeffler. But also looking at that governor's race, and what's fascinating about it is you have two people in Brian Kemp, the current governor, who has the endorsement of former Vice President Mike Pence, going up against former Senator David Perdue, who has the endorsement of former President Donald Trump. So if you follow that bouncing ball, you've got President Trump endorsing one candidate in David Perdue, and you have Vice President Pence, former Vice President Pence, endorsing Brian Kemp. Right now, it's showing that President Trump's word is not as weighty as he would like. Perdue down in the polls significantly to Brian Kemp. So is this one more test of just how powerful is the former president? We'll wait and see, but it'll be exciting to watch on Tuesday for sure.
Oh, and we'll be watching closely. Chief Political Correspondent Scott Thuman, National Correspondent Atra Elnishar. Thank you both. Eugene, back to you.
And thanks to our Capitol Hill team. Congress cracking down on e-cigarette manufacturers exploiting loopholes to evade those harsh regulations. How their products slipped through the cracks and how much time they have before they're wiped from store shelves. Coming up. Right now, the vaping industry is pumping out products with child-friendly flavors, which appear to target the young market, despite those flavors being against the law. Spotlight on America discovered that's because e-cigarette makers have been exploiting a loophole. As national investigative correspondent Lisa Fletcher reports, Congress is taking action.
When the FDA cracked down on the sale of flavored e-cigarettes in 2020, it was supposed to mark the end of the teen vaping epidemic. The goal? To shut down fruity flavors that attract young buyers. For Representative Raja Krishnamurthy, it's an issue he's long been focused on, not just as an Illinois congressman, but as a father.
My first son is in high school, and in the first week of his high school experience, he was approached dozens of times to start vaping. So this is both a professional and a personal issue for me.
But fast forward to today, and some 2 million teens across the country are still vaping. Just this month, we found flavors like PB and Jam and sour watermelon strawberry still being sold because the vaping industry found an unexpected way around the FDA's rules. Instead of using plant-based tobacco, which is strictly regulated by the FDA, they started using synthetic nicotine, technically outside the agency's authority, allowing them to keep those enticing flavors on the market with impunity.
The industry and the e-cigarette industry is staying one step ahead of them. And so that's why we had to step into action again.
The action came in the form of a new rule passed by Congress earlier this year that grants the FDA the authority to now also regulate synthetic nicotine products.
So they have the authority to pull the product off the shelf?
Sure, absolutely.
Manufacturers now have to apply for authorization to sell their products and then wait for the FDA to approve it.
It's throwing the baby out with the bathwater in a horrendous way.
Jim McCarthy of the American Vapor Manufacturers Association, an industry trade group, calls the new rule devastating.
You're leaving millions of Americans out in the cold, people who are successfully quitting cigarettes through nicotine vaping. And that's because it's the single most effective smoking cessation method ever devised.
But does that make kids collateral damage?
No, look, kids should not be smoking anything. They should not be using nicotine at all, obviously. And the solution to that is to have careful enforcement at the retail level with state and federal regulations.
Recent government data still shows up to 11% of high school students use e-cigarettes, and 8 in 10 of them use flavored products.
Your detractors will say you do market to kids, specifically with flavors like, grape Kool-Aid and cotton candy. So is that not marketing to children?
You don't stop liking flavors when you turn 21 years old. Grown-ups and adults like flavors too.
It comes down to a simple notion. Flavors hook kids.
Matt Myers is the president of the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids.
There may be potential that well-regulated e-cigarettes targeted to adult smokers could be helpful. Instead, what has happened is this industry has introduced flavors that they know appeal to kids, use imagery that the tobacco industry has long used to appeal to kids, and has created a youth e-cigarette epidemic.
He told us he joins Congressman Krishnamurthy in hoping the FDA takes swift action to permanently move flavored products off the shelves and out of the hands of kids.
We got to move right away, so I'm looking forward to action ASAP. I'm glad the FDA is in the fight. Now let's hustle.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
The law that gives FDA regulating authority is now in effect, which means a clock is ticking for those manufacturers. Any product not approved by the FDA will be removed from store shelves on July 13th. That does it for this weekend edition of the National Desk, America's News Now. Don't forget you can watch us live from 6 to 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. till midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with all the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Eugene Ramirez. Have a great rest of your weekend.